I have swallowed empires and erased their names from memory. I have drowned kings and kissed prophets beneath my endless skin. And yet, I still taste the iron and sorrow of the ship they called Unsinkable. The ocean speaks with the weight of centuries, its voice rolling like thunder in slow motion. Beneath the quiet blue lies a graveyard of human ambition, from Viking longships to Roman triremes, but none as proud, none as cursed as the Royal Mailship Titanic. The sea remembers the night she was born, not in the shipyards of Belfast, but in the minds of men and where greed, pride, and defiance took shape before the first rivet was ever struck. They called her a marvel of modernity, a fortress of luxury, a floating cathedral of progress. Yet beneath the steel and the chandeliers, something ancient stirred. It began, as curses often do, with something stolen. If you're hooked on the story, leave and like, click the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more. It was 1909. The dawn of a new century shimmered like polished brass. Humanity believed it had tamed nature, built engines that devoured distance, towers that kissed the clouds, and ships that mocked the sea. In Belfast, under the roar of hammers and the hiss of molten metal, the White Star Line gave birth to their masterpiece. The Olympic-class liners were to redefine the world. But the Titanic, she was different. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, often spoke of her like a child. "She is balance and beauty," he said, running his hands along her blueprint. "She'll outlast storms themselves." Yet deep in Harland and Wolff's yard, workers whispered that the steel was cold in a strange way, that something about her frame rejected the light, that the rivets cracked too easily. One foreman told of an accident, a laborer crushed beneath a falling beam who gasped with his final breath, "She's cursed already." Nobody listened. Nobody dared delay the future. But when the Titanic was christened, she was not blessed. Unlike other great ships, no bottle was broken against her hull. The executives, impatient and proud, skipped the ritual, and in that moment the old spirits of the deep took notice. The year was 1912. Across Europe, winter still lingered like an old ghost. Passengers arrived dressed in optimism. Aristocrats with names engraved in history. Immigrants with dreams tucked into worn suitcases. The orchestra rehearsed. The engines hummed. Cameras flashed. But not everyone was celebrating. A fire had been burning, quietly, deep in her coal bunkers since before she left. A smoldering wound in her heart of steel. Engineers whispered about it. A few officers knew. Yet no one dared delay the maiden voyage. The public must never see the cracks beneath perfection. And there were other signs, stranger ones. In the days before departure, several crew members refused to board, claiming they saw a dark shape pacing the decks at night. A tall figure, wet as though he'd risen from the sea. An Irish stoker swore he saw it standing near the bow, watching the stars with empty eyes. He deserted the next morning. Then came the artifact. Among the cargo, mostly luggage, luxury goods, and mail, there was a crate no one claimed publicly. Rumor said it belonged to Lord Canterville, a collector returning from Cairo. Inside was said to be the funerary mask of an Egyptian priestess, a relic known among museum circles as the unlucky mummy. It was said that whoever disturbed her rest would meet disaster upon the waters. And though historians debate whether the artifact truly made it aboard, the legends persist, whispered in the deep. They brought her across the sea, the ocean murmurs. But she was mine already. Captain Edward Smith stood on the bridge that final morning, eyes fixed on the horizon. A veteran of the sea, he was calm, dignified, and almost regal. But even he felt something uneasy in the air. The gulls were silent. The wind was heavy with salt and omen. April 10th, 1912. The Titanic's engines roared to life. Crowds cheered as the ship of dreams began her journey, bound for eternity. On board, life bloomed like a small city. The first-class salons shimmered with laughter and violin music. Below deck, immigrants sang folk songs of hope and new beginnings. Thomas Andrews walked her halls, checking every detail, whispering softly, "Perfect. She's perfect." But in the darkness below, the fire still burned, unseen, unstoppable, eating into her iron ribs. As the Titanic crossed into the open Atlantic, wireless operators began receiving ice warnings. 1, then 2, then 7. Each message passed along, some ignored, some delayed. Luxury did not pause for caution. Meanwhile, passengers reported strange dreams. A woman in cabin C90 woke screaming that she saw a sea of glass and faces below it. A child told her mother of a man made of waves standing outside their porthole. Still, the ship sailed on. Night fell like a prayer unanswered. The Titanic sailed beneath a canopy of stars. A sky so clear it seemed heaven itself watched in silence. The sea was still, too still. No waves, no wind, only the deep breath of fate gathering itself. On the bridge, Captain Smith stood quietly. At 11:30 p.m., Frederick Fleet, high in the crow's nest, rubbed his frozen eyes and muttered to Reginald Lee beside him. "It's like the sea's gone asleep. Or it's waiting," Lee whispered. Below deck, the boilers roared. In the first-class lounge, violins hummed through a waltz. Champagne sparkled. The great clock ticked toward destiny. And then, 11:40 p.m., Fleet's voice shattered the stillness. "Iceberg right ahead!" The bell rang 3 times. The engines reversed. The rudder swung. Steel screamed against ice, a low grinding wail that seemed almost human. But it wasn't just an iceberg they struck. Witnesses would later swear the air itself trembled, as though something ancient beneath the waves had stirred. "I felt it," said a surviving stoker years later. Like the sea itself groaned, angry we'd disturbed it. Down in the mailroom, bags burst open as water rushed in, thousands of letters from across the world swallowed in seconds. Each one a story erased. And in that same flooding corridor, a crate floated loose, its lid cracked open. Inside, beneath the faint glow of an emergency lantern, the gilded face of the Egyptian mask stared upward, eyes glinting gold and sorrowful. One crewman claimed he heard a whisper from it. The sea remembers, above chaos blossomed. Passengers rushed to the decks, disbelief turning to terror as the ship's bow began to tilt. "Unsinkable," they shouted. They said it was unsinkable. But deep within the Atlantic, something answered that arrogance. Mortals built their pride upon the sea, but every empire that forgets humility must one day kneel to water in silence. The ocean, ancient and indifferent, coiled around the steel giant like a serpent reclaiming its prey. As the Titanic broke apart, witnesses saw something strange amid the chaos. A glow, not from lamps or flares, but from the waves themselves. Some swore it took the shape of a woman, vast, shimmering, her arms outstretched. Her voice, if it was a voice, was neither cruel nor kind. It was simply inevitable. "Back to the depths from which you rose," it said. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic disappeared beneath the water. 1,500 souls went silent. And in that silence, the myth was sealed. When dawn came, the ocean was calm again. The only sound, waves lapping gently against the lifeboats, as if trying to comfort the living or hush the dead. Survivors stared at the horizon, waiting for rescue that felt like eternity. But beneath them, 2 miles below, the Titanic rested, a steel cathedral turned tomb. And in her cargo hold, sealed in shadow, lay something far older than the ship itself. Weeks later, as investigators from both Britain and America began their inquiries, strange inconsistencies appeared in testimony. Few crewmen swore they saw lights beneath the water moments before the collision. Others spoke of unexplained heat on the starboard side, as if something inside the hull had flared to life. The official reports dismissed such claims as hysteria. Yet in a private memorandum later recovered in 1959, a line from an unknown source was found. There are artifacts aboard that were never meant to leave the eye. Nile, one of them, calls the sea. In 1985, when Robert Ballard finally located the Titanic's wreck, he found that several compartments were inexplicably collapsed, not from the iceberg impact, but from within. Among the scattered relics cataloged was a bronze coffer fused shut by heat. It was sent quietly to the British Museum, but it never arrived. Inside, reportedly, was a funerary carving of an Egyptian priestess, Nitocris, the so-called Queen of the Abyss. According to papyrus fragments found near her tomb, Nitocris was said to have walked between water and fire, and those who disturbed her sleep would drown in their triumph. The inscription upon the carving's base read, "The unsinkable shall learn to sink." Some survivors never escaped the ocean's grasp. In the years following, dozens reported recurring dreams of dark temples beneath the sea, corridors of coral and gold, and a throne made of lightless water. One man, Lawrence Beasley, a second-class passenger, wrote in his diary, "I saw her face again, not in the waves, but in my sleep. A woman crowned in scales and stars. She whispered, 'The ocean is not your grave. It is your mirror." He never wrote again. By 1913, the myth of the Titanic's curse had become folklore. Yet privately, certain circles treated it as scripture. The Society of the Deep Veil, a secret maritime group formed after the tragedy, began collecting stories of vessels that disappeared under similar circumstances. And in their sealed records was one chilling annotation: "The sea tests those who call themselves gods." Now, when modern submersibles descend to the wreck, some divers claim to feel vibrations, faint, rhythmic like a heartbeat under the steel. They report strange electromagnetic readings near the bow. The cameras sometimes flicker with static, showing outlines that vanish as soon as they appear. Faces, symbols, eyes carved into coral. When one researcher replayed a corrupted audio file recorded near the wreck, a low voice, almost human, seemed to whisper through the static. "You have not yet sunk far enough. A ship may die, but its arrogance lives on in those who forget the lesson." The Unsinkable fell not to water but to memory, and memory is the deepest sea. Months later, the Russian submarine Kursk imploded under mysterious circumstances. The pressure readings mirrored those around the Titanic wreck zone. Coincidence, perhaps, or echo. In 2022, a deep-sea exploration team near Newfoundland detected a hollow cavity beneath the Titanic's stern, a chamber not listed on original blueprints. The divers were ordered to suspend the mission. 2 days later, the feed was classified by the British Maritime Authority under a file name, Echo 12, the Nitocris anomaly. No images were ever released. Some say the Titanic story was never about a ship, but a mirror for every civilization that dares call itself unsinkable. We build our empires in defiance of nature, polish our ambitions, until they gleam like the ship's bow under moonlight and still the deep waits. Patient, eternal. What they buried with the Titanic was not a treasure, but a question. How far will humankind sail before it remembers that the sea was never ours? You've just journeyed through another hidden realm of time, where myth, memory, and history converge beneath the waves. If this story stirred something in you, the awe, the fear, the hunger to know what lies beneath, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Rift of Realms. Every echo we chase brings us closer to the truth buried in forgotten places. And you, traveler, are part of that search. Until we meet again, remember, some ships sink, but their stories rise forever.